The New India
Sure.
Foundation is a foundation that has been set up to look at books and other things to deal with post-independent India. It came out of a conversation that Ram Guha and I had 15 years back in the iconic Koshis, and he wanted to do something about encouraging writing on post-independent India. And so the first sort of thing that we came out with was the idea of fellowships. And fellowships are given to people to write books on any topic, but they have to be about India after independence. So far, 52 such fellowships have been given, and it has produced 23 books. So I think it's quite an achievement, and a lot of the credit goes to Ram because he has personally mentored and helped all these writers to write these books. And so I think we should give a big round of applause to Ram. And a few years back, we felt that we are both getting old, so we have two young trustees, Manish Sabharwal and Srinath Raghavan, and Srinath is now helping Ram with the books, and Manish does everything else. So that's how it works. Now, sometime back, we also have a lecture series, and we had about 10 lectures. We have them in Bangalore every year. It's called the New India Foundation Lecture. But today we are here for the book award, which is a new thing that we started. In fact, this is the second time we are doing it, and we had the book award for the first time last year. And it's one of the tradition is to do this event at the Bangalore Lit Fest. So with that, I'll hand over to Ram.
Thank you, Nandan. Thank you all. As Nandan said, our foundation is 15 years old, and we produced a series of quite, some of them quite path-breaking books on the history of independent India. Most of them written by young Indians, men and women, first-time writers, journalists, activists, academics. And then when Srinath and Manish came on board 2 years ago, they thought that we should also have a book prize. So we decided to have an annual book prize for the best book, non-fiction. So it discriminates against novelists and poets. It is in that sense for non-fiction books, but temporally restricted. So it's kind of modern India, but of any nationality. Our fellowship is only for Indian citizens, but the book prize is for people of any nationality. It's called the Kamaladevi Chattopadhyay Book Prize, after an extraordinary Indian social reformer, politician, someone who revived our crafts tradition, a dancer, and a really pioneering feminist who happened to be from Karnataka. Of course, she was from Karnataka, India, and the world, but we thought we should name it after a truly great resident of our state. The process itself was that we called in submissions, about 300 odd submissions came from different publishers, and then we had a jury and a short list, and Srinath will describe the short list.
Thank you, Ram. So the shortlist for the Kamaladevi Chattopadhyay NIF Book Prize had 6 books this year. In alphabetic order, Manoranjan Vyapari, Integrating My Chandal Life; Rohit Day, A People's Constitution, The Everyday Life of Law in the Indian Republic; Snigdha Poonam's Dreamers, How Young Indians Are Changing Their World; Alpa Shah's Night March, A Journey into India's Naxal Heartlands; Ornit Shani, How India Became Democratic; and Piers Vitebsky's Living Without the Dead, Loss and Redemption in a Jungle Cosmos. And as you can see, the shortlist itself is reflective of the ambitions of the New India Foundation to encourage an extraordinary variety of work and really promote very different ways of thinking about contemporary India and its development. And I'm delighted to announce that the winner of the second Kamaladevi Chattopadhyay NIF Book Prize is Ornit Shani, How India Became Democratic. Ornit, can you please come on stage? Yeah, I'll request Professor Niraja Gopal Jayal to give her the award. Nirja, may I also request you to say a few words about the book?
Warm congratulations to Orni. Thank you all. It's a pleasure to be able to say a few words about this marvelous book, which, as some of you might know, is a book about how the first electoral role in independent India was prepared between 1947 and 1950. So it's really a book about the prehistory of India's electoral democracy, as it were, a process of the infrastructure of electoral democracy being put in place. And to that extent, it's a work of political history, one that is deeply researched. Orneeth has looked at archives which had never been seen before. So it is a work of history, but to my mind, it is a book that speaks not only of the past, but also to the present. And so I'll say a couple of words about how it speaks to the present. As a nation, we are inordinately proud of our democracy, despite all its limitations and its slippages from time to time. Sometimes we have moments of anxiety and doubt about our democracy and its worth. And when you're struck by that moment of self-doubt, this is a great book to read, because it does 2 or 3 things very splendidly. The first of these is that it shows us how the idea of democracy itself was implanted in the sort of political imagination of the Indian people. And this was, I'm sure you'll all agree, a revolutionary idea in 1947, 1948, 1950, a revolutionary idea to adopt the principle of one person, one vote, universal adult franchise in a society that was so deeply hierarchical, where poverty and illiteracy was so widespread. This principle was adopted. And Orneeth's book shows that this was about cultivating democratic dispositions, not just amongst the people, the demos, but also amongst state bureaucracy. And that's a really surprising part of the book. It shows you how public officials were deeply engaged and committed to the process of making the roles as complete and as exhaustive as possible. We wouldn't think so highly of public officials today, perhaps in similar commitments, in similar ways. The second thing this book does is that it shows us that that principle of one person, one vote has actually sustained itself into our present. Now, the Constitution gives us so many guarantees of equality, including political equality, but not all of them are perfectly realized. In fact, most of them are very imperfectly realized. Political equality, one vote, one person, one vote, is actually a principle that remains, at least so far, undisputed. And that is a very big achievement of our democracy. But I said so far, so let me qualify that. In the shadow of the NRC, with large numbers of exclusions, with the potential threat of disenfranchisement of people, this book actually holds up a mirror to us. It shows us the best that we could be, the best that we can be, and the best that we were in far more difficult times, in far worse times, when the bureaucracy was working overtime to include 18 million partition refugees. For the rest, I'll let Orneeth speak about her book in her conversation with Srinath. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nirja. And I also want to thank you, Nirja, for all your support to NIF over the years. She's been a distinguished member of our jury for the scholarship, for the book prize, and her support means a lot to us. Thank you for being here today. May I now request Rohini Nilekani to give the prize check to Orneeth. Please sit. Orneeth, may I request you to say a few words? No.
Okay to speak. Can I put this here? Immediately break it.
Just to say that the few words that Orneeth will say, I don't know what she's going to say, are going to be followed by a substantive and substantial discussion between Orneeth and Srinath Raghavan on her book. So listen to her few words, but stay on to listen to the more substantive discussion afterwards.
Okay. So, firstly, thank you. Warm thanks to you, members of the committee, Nirja and Rukmini that is not here, and Manish and Nandan and Ram and Srinath. I'm thrilled and moved to be the recipient of the Kamaladevi Chattopadhyay Prize this year, and especially in the face of the very distinguished list of the company I was with on the short list, the superb books by Alpa Shah, Mahoranjan Baipari, Pierre Zvitebsky, Snigdam Punam, and Rohide. I know closely the work of Alpas and Rohides, and I have huge appreciation to it. Now, Nirja, thanks for the very kind word. I just want to add a few things. My book tells the story of how India prepared the first list of voters on the basis of universal adult franchise. Now, after 17 general elections and many more state elections in India, electoral rolls and voters list in India seems obvious. It's almost being taken for granted. But actually, when this nation was made, doing so was not obvious at all. India had to do that beyond the fact that it meant that India had to produce at the time the longest list of voters in democratic world history, right? 173 million people. It had to do so under seemingly impossible odds. It was in the midst of the partition that teared the population and the territory apart. 552 princely states had yet to merge into India. There was widespread poverty, 18 million refugees across the country, and 85% of the population was illiterate. So it wasn't obvious, and moreover, this work was done. The work on the first was done on the first draft was done between 1947 and 1949, ahead of, in anticipation of the Constitution. So it was. This book project started with me asking this question: how indeed India made the first list of voters under these circumstances? And I asked many senior electoral officials who ultimately referred me to the report on the first elections by the first Chief Election Commissioner of India, Sukumar Sen. And the report contains 2 pages saying in briefing that there was some preparatory work done by the Constituent Assembly Secretariat. And it was then that I realized that behind these 2 projects, behind these 2 pages, there is a far bigger story. And I started rather obsessively to search for an answer. And the work, the researching this book for more than 5 years was a truly inspiring experience. And it was an inspiring experience because what India did, and I may, come back to a few things that Nirja was saying, what India did when it did so, it actually turned all its population into equal individuals for the purpose of voting, for the purpose of authorizing the government. It meant that it institutionalized and operationalized the principle of one woman, one man, one vote in a deeply hierarchical and unequal society. And as I said, this was not at all obvious. So the book tells a story of hope. It's a story about hope, about imagination, and no country in the world ever done such a thing at a stroke as India did. And this is the inspiration, and I really warmly thank the jury for giving recognition to that story. Thank you.
So I just wanted to thank the Bangalore Lit Fest. It's always a wonderful venue for our book prize. Wanted to thank all the jury members. Obviously, Rohini and Nandan are the calm dhenus of the New India Foundation, and we milk them as much as we can. And they go along with that, and that's obviously wonderful for us. Ram is, most people know him as an author, but he is India's most successful intellectual venture capitalist. I know he's known for his books, but converting 53 fellowships into 23 books, which will be 25 in a few months, is just remarkable. And it's a 50% conversion ratio of fellowships. I've tried to benchmark it globally, and it just doesn't exist. So I think that Ram has absolutely been the spine of New India Foundation, and we thank you for that. And once again, thank you all for coming, and thank you, Ornit, for making the hike all the way from Israel. And now we will have the panel between Ornit and Srinath.